Shanghai, 1873. One late autumn night, one of China's most celebrated performers married the daughter of a wealthy merchant family. Within hours, the newlyweds were in chains and on their way to prison. Their supposed crime? Marrying each other. So how did a wedding become one of the most notorious criminal cases of late Qing China? Welcome to A Different Story. I'm Jason, and this is the Yang Yuelou case. The celebrity and the heiress. The central figure of this story was no ordinary man. He was one of the biggest celebrities in China at the time, Yang Yuelou. If you traveled back to Shanghai in the 1870s, Yang Yuelou would have been one of the most recognizable public figures in the country. Today, people follow movie stars, pop singers, and internet influencers. But in an era without movies, television, or the internet, the theater was the center of the entertainment world. The most celebrated opera performers enjoyed a level of fame comparable to that of modern-day celebrities, and Yang Yuelou stood at the very top. According to contemporary accounts, whenever Yang Yuelou performed, theaters were packed to capacity. Some people spent months' worth of savings to secure a good seat. Young women often waited outside the theater after performances, hoping for nothing more than a glimpse of him. His singing was widely praised, but what captivated audiences even more was his appearance. Contemporary descriptions portrayed him as handsome, elegant, and charismatic on stage. Many female admirers became obsessed with him. Some threw jewelry and embroidered handkerchiefs onto the stage, while others kept his portraits in their homes. Wealth, fame, applause, admiration. For most people, Yang Yuelou already possessed everything one could dream of. Yet no one could have imagined that a 17-year-old girl would completely change the course of his life. Her name was Wei Abao. She came from one of the wealthiest merchant families in Shanghai. Her father, originally from Changshan in Guangdong province, was a powerful tea merchant whose business profited enormously from Shanghai's booming international trade. The Wei family had accumulated immense wealth and wielded significant influence in the city's commercial circles. If Yang Yuelou was the star of the stage, then Wei Abao was true high society. According to later accounts, after attending Yang Yuelou's performances for 3 consecutive days, Wei Abao fell completely in love with him. At first, her family dismissed it as a teenage crush. After all, young women of the time often admired famous performers. But as the weeks passed, they realized the situation was far more serious than they had imagined. Wei Abao lost her appetite. She spent long hours staring into space. She withdrew from others and refused to socialize. Most alarming of all, she rejected every marriage proposal arranged by her family. Before long, Wei Abao made a decision that shocked everyone around her. She wanted to marry Yang Yuelou, and that decision would change both of their lives forever. A forbidden marriage. To people today, the idea of a wealthy young woman falling in love with a celebrity seems perfectly normal. But in 19th century Qing China, it crossed a very dangerous line. Although Yang Yuelou was famous throughout the country, there was one identity he could never escape. He was an actor. In the social and legal system of the time, opera performers were not respected the way celebrities are today. Quite the opposite. They belonged to a group that had long been looked down upon by traditional society. This can be difficult for modern people to understand. According to long-standing social traditions, society was divided into different classes. Some people were born as respectable commoners, while others carried a social status that could never truly be erased. For Yang Yuelou, that label was what was known as a mean or low-status status. It came with many restrictions. Most importantly, there was a strict rule. People of low status were not allowed to marry people of respectable status. In simple terms, an actor like Yang Yuelou was not supposed to marry a respectable woman, especially not the daughter of a wealthy and influential family. Such a marriage could be declared invalid and might even violate the law. Yang Yuelou understood all of this very well. So when a matchmaker approached him on behalf of the Wei family, his first reaction was not excitement, but fear. But Yang Yuelou underestimated Wei Abao's determination. To marry him, the 17-year-old girl went on a hunger strike. She refused food. She refused medicine. She even threatened to take her own life. The first person to break was not Wei Bao, but her mother. As a parent, she could not bear to watch her daughter grow weaker with each passing day, and so a bold and dangerous plan began to take shape. What none of them realized was that this plan would soon ignite a scandal that would shake all of Shanghai. The wedding disaster. Faced with her daughter's increasingly desperate resistance, Wei Bao's mother finally gave in. In her eyes, although Yang Yuelou came from a low social background, he was a decent man who had built his fame and fortune through his own talent and hard work. More importantly, her daughter truly loved him. So, without telling her husband, who was often away on business, she secretly contacted Yang Yuelou. What Yang did not realize, however, was that this marriage had never received the approval of the Wei family as a whole. He assumed that if the girl's mother had agreed, then at least the marriage had the blessing of her parents. After much hesitation, he finally accepted the proposal. But while preparations for the wedding were underway, disaster struck. Somehow, news of the marriage reached Wei Bao's uncle. Unlike her mother, he strongly opposed the match from the very beginning. In his eyes, this was not a marriage at all. It was a scandal that could destroy the reputation of the entire family. The Wei family was not simply a wealthy household. Behind them stood the powerful Xiangshan merchant network from Guangdong. In that era, family honor and social status mattered far more than personal feelings. If word spread that the daughter of a prominent merchant family had married an actor, it would not only embarrass the Wei family, it would humiliate the entire merchant community connected to them. The uncle immediately demanded that the wedding be canceled, but he was facing a young woman who had already made up her mind. Once again, Wei Bao resorted to a hunger strike. On one side stood the pressure of the family. On the other stood her daughter's life. Caught between the two, her mother fell into despair. Eventually, she came up with what she believed was a perfect solution. Following a local custom practiced in parts of Shanghai, they would stage a symbolic bride-snatching wedding. Yang Yuelou would quickly take Wei Bao away, complete the marriage ceremony, and create a fait accompli. Once the wedding was finished, the family would have no choice but to accept reality. The plan sounded simple enough, but what Wei Bao's mother failed to understand was that she was not about to confront a family disagreement. She was about to challenge one of the most rigid and unforgiving social systems of her time. On the day of the wedding, everything appeared to go perfectly. Wei Bao left her family home with 7 large chests of dowry gifts. For the first time in months, Yang Yuelou felt a sense of relief. Along the way, he even began to believe that perhaps love really could overcome the cold rules of society. By the time they returned home and the guests had departed, the room finally grew quiet. After months of struggle, they were finally husband and wife. But neither of them knew that a storm was already gathering in the darkness. Not long after the wedding ceremony ended, loud shouting erupted outside. Moments later, the front gate was smashed open. More than a dozen officers burst into the house. The bride and groom barely had time to react before they were surrounded. Yang Yuelou was thrown to the ground. Iron chains were fastened around his neck. Wei Bao was dragged away by force. In an instant, the room that had been filled with celebration became a crime scene. Only then did they learn what had happened. Someone had reported them to the authorities. The accuser was Wei Bao's uncle. The charges left everyone stunned. Abducting a young woman and stealing property. A wedding had become a criminal case overnight, and the real nightmare was only beginning. Love on trial. After his arrest, Yang Yuelou was quickly brought before the court. Faced with repeated questioning from government officials, he explained the situation again and again. He presented a list of the betrothal gifts. He produced the marriage contract. He even provided evidence showing that Wei Bao's mother had approved the marriage. But in a Qing dynasty courtroom, facts were not always the most important thing, at least not to the officials handling the case. From the very beginning, many people had already made up their minds. How could an actor possibly be worthy of a wealthy merchant's daughter? With that assumption already in place, every argument Yang Yuelou made seemed doomed to fail. Worse still, Officials resorted to physical punishment in an effort to force a confession. Historical accounts describe Yang Yuelou being subjected to harsh interrogation. He reportedly fainted multiple times, only to be revived with cold water and questioned again. Yet the person who truly shocked everyone was not Yang Yuelou. It was 17-year-old Wei Bao. Under the customs of the time, there was actually a simple way for her to protect herself. All she had to do was claim that she had been deceived. She could say that she had been manipulated, tricked, or taken advantage of. By presenting herself as a victim, she would likely gain sympathy and escape punishment. Many people expected her to do exactly that. But she didn't. Standing before the court, Wei Bao made a choice that stunned everyone in the room. She insisted that she had married Yang Yuelou of her own free will. No one had forced her. No one had abducted her. No one had stolen her property. Everything that had happened was her own decision. Enraged by her refusal to submit, the officials decided to punish her. Wei Bao was subjected to severe corporal punishment. According to contemporary reports, a bamboo paddle struck her face 200 times. The young girl was beaten so badly that she nearly lost consciousness. Yet even then, she refused to change her story. She never accused Yang Yuelou. She never claimed that she had been deceived. She never denied her feelings for him. What she did not realize was that the more firmly she stood by Yang Yuelou, the more she enraged those determined to separate them. And outside the courtroom, a much larger force was already pushing the case toward an even more dangerous direction: the merchant guilds and the government. If the courtroom interrogation was a public execution, then the forces operating outside the courtroom were what truly determined Yang Yuelou's fate. Because this was never just a dispute over a marriage. In the eyes of Wei Bao's uncle and many influential merchants from Guangdong, this was a battle over the honor and reputation of an entire merchant community. To them, Wei Bao's marriage to Yang Yuelou was not the story of a young woman pursuing love. It was a dangerous precedent. If the daughter of a powerful merchant family could marry an actor today, then what would stop other wealthy families' daughters from doing the same tomorrow? If such a marriage were tolerated, the social standing that merchant guilds had spent decades building could be threatened. For that reason, they believed the marriage had to be stopped, and it had to be stopped completely. Before long, people noticed something interesting. The magistrate presiding over the case, Ye Tingjuan, was also from Xiangshan in Guangdong, the same region as the Wei family and many of the merchants involved. As the proceedings continued, more and more people came to believe that this was no ordinary legal dispute. It was a coordinated effort to destroy Yang Yuelou. In that era, ordinary people had almost no way to resist forces like these: family power, merchant guilds, local government officials. When all three came down on a single individual at the same time, they could crush almost anyone. Under normal circumstances, Yang Yuelou's fate was already sealed. Exile, hard labor, or perhaps something even worse awaited him. But what no one expected was that an unlikely opponent had begun watching the case closely. It was neither a government official nor a wealthy merchant. It was a newspaper. A newspaper changes everything. 1 year before the Yang Yuelou case erupted, something seemingly insignificant happened in Shanghai. In 1872, a newspaper called Shen Bao officially began publication. Today, people encounter news media every day, making it difficult to appreciate how important this was. But in China at the time, it represented an entirely new kind of power. For thousands of years, ordinary people had very limited access to information. The government controlled most public narratives, and decisions made by local officials were rarely subject to outside scrutiny. Shen Bao changed that. Unlike traditional government-backed publications, it did not rely on official support. It relied on readers. And for a commercial newspaper, what story could possibly be more compelling than the Yang Yuelou case? It had all the ingredients of a sensational headline: a nationally famous celebrity, a wealthy merchant's daughter, a scandalous wedding, and a highly controversial trial. So Shen Bao began covering the case relentlessly. As the reporting became more detailed, more and more readers began to realize that this did not look like an ordinary criminal case. It looked like a deeply unequal struggle between power and an individual. Before long, all of Shanghai was talking about it. According to contemporary accounts, the Yang Yuelou case became one of the most talked about stories in Shanghai. Every morning, many readers opened their newspapers and immediately searched for the latest update. As public attention continued to grow, officials in the Shanghai county government began to feel something unfamiliar: pressure. For the first time, they could no longer control the public narrative surrounding a case. For the first time, a force born from the modern age was openly challenging traditional authority. Yet, despite the growing public outrage, Magistrate Ye Tingjuan ultimately delivered his verdict. The marriage was declared invalid. Wei Bao was returned to her family. Yang Yuelou was sentenced to exile. But in Qing China, it often amounted to the destruction of a person's entire life. Many exiles never even survived the journey to their destination. When news of the verdict spread, Shanghai erupted once again. Supporters of Yang Yuelou were furious. But by then, the case was moving beyond Shanghai. Under Qing legal procedure, major cases had to be reviewed by higher authorities and eventually sent to Beijing for final approval. What no one realized was that the turning point that would change Yang Yuelou's fate was quietly taking shape more than 1,000 kilometers away, inside the Forbidden City. And the person who would alter the course of the case was the most powerful woman in the Qing Empire, Empress Dowager Cixi. Yes, the very same Empress Dowager Cixi we've discussed before on this channel, the absolute ruler infamous for having over 100 dishes served at a single breakfast. A twist from the Forbidden City. To many people, the case was effectively over, and everything would return to the way it was supposed to be. But history is sometimes more dramatic than fiction. While the case was awaiting final approval, it caught the attention of an unexpected person: Empress Dowager Cixi. In modern films and television dramas, Cixi is usually portrayed as a political figure. But she also had another side that people rarely talk about. She loved opera. In fact, she was obsessed with it. Within the late Qing court, opera was one of the most important forms of entertainment. Cixi not only enjoyed watching performances, but also supported numerous opera troupes and was familiar with many of the era's most famous performers. And Yang Yuelou was one of the biggest stars among them. What happened next remains the subject of debate among historians. Different versions of the story exist. According to the most widely circulated account, one day while watching an opera performance, Cixi casually asked why Yang Yuelou had not appeared in Beijing for such a long time. A eunuch then gave her a brief summary of the case. After listening, Cixi reportedly paused for a moment and said only one sentence: "The punishment seems too severe." There was no formal intervention, no imperial decree, not even an official order, just a single comment. But for the officials of the late Qing Empire, that was more than enough. Everyone understood that in those days, Cixi's opinion often carried more weight than the law itself. News of her remark quickly reached the officials responsible for reviewing the case. Suddenly, the approval process that had been moving smoothly came to a halt. No one wanted to risk pushing for a harsh sentence when the most powerful person in the empire appeared to disapprove. And no one was willing to challenge the wishes of the empire's actual ruler simply to protect the pride of a merchant guild in Shanghai. Gradually, the atmosphere surrounding the case began to change. Those who had once been eager to condemn Yang Yuelou became silent. Officials who had previously been aggressive became cautious. And far away in Shanghai, Magistrate Ye Tingjuan and others slowly realized something important. Yang Yuelou might no longer be so easy to destroy. But that did not mean justice had arrived. For Yang Yuelou, sitting in prison, nothing had changed. He was still waiting for the final verdict on his life, and that wait would last 2 full years. In 1875, a major event shook the Qing Empire. The Tongzhi Emperor died, and the 4-year-old Guangxu Emperor ascended the throne. At the same time, Empress Dowager Cixi was approaching her 40th birthday. According to imperial tradition, the accession of a new emperor and major state celebrations were often accompanied by large-scale amnesties. As a result, many prisoners received reduced sentences or were released altogether. Against this backdrop, Yang Yuelou finally caught a break. After 2 years behind bars, he was released. But freedom came at a price. The authorities issued one final order. He was forbidden from ever returning to Shanghai. On the surface, Yang Yuelou had regained his freedom. In reality, he had been permanently banished from the city where he had achieved his greatest success. And at that moment, his fate and Wei Abao's were finally separated forever. The fate of two lovers. At this point in the story, many people might think this was a victory. The media had exposed injustice. The public had pushed back against powerful interests. And in the end, Yang Yuelou walked out of prison alive. It would seem that justice had prevailed. But reality was far crueler than the story itself. When Yang Yuelou finally left his prison cell, he was no longer the dazzling star he had once been. Years of imprisonment and punishment had taken a severe toll on his body. According to later accounts, his legs were permanently damaged. The man who had once amazed audiences with his performances could no longer move the way he once had. It was the destruction of an entire career. The superstar who had once been adored by thousands was now forced to leave the city he knew best and start over alone. Many people remember Yang Yuelou, but the person I find hardest to forget is the 17-year-old girl. Wei Abao's fate was no less heartbreaking. She was returned to her family, and from that point on, her life disappeared into uncertainty. Different accounts tell different stories about what happened next. Some claimed that her family kept her under lifelong confinement. Others suggested that she was forced into a punitive marriage with a man in his 70s. None of these stories can be verified with certainty today. But one thing seems almost certain. Wei Abao and Yang Yuelou never saw each other again. The young woman who had endured public humiliation, who had been beaten in court, and who had risked everything for love, ultimately lost her battle against the world she lived in. Years later, Yang Yuelou returned to the stage under a different name in order to make a living. But audiences noticed that he had changed. He no longer played heroic young champions. He rarely portrayed charming romantic leads. The man who stepped onto the stage was no longer the same person who had once captivated Shanghai. If we view the Yang Yuelou case as a love story, then it is unquestionably a tragedy. Wei Abao believed that love could overcome class barriers. Yang Yuelou believed that talent could earn respect. Both of them tried to break through the invisible wall that stood between them. And both of them failed. Because in that era, some rules were stronger than love. Some identities were written into a person's fate from the moment they were born. Perhaps that is what makes the Yang Yuelou case so tragic. It is not simply the story of a fallen celebrity, nor is it only the story of a young woman's love. It is the story of an era in which individual freedom was beginning to awaken, yet remained trapped beneath the weight of an old social order. Yang Yuelou and Wei Abao were only two among countless victims of that age. The difference is that history happened to remember their names. I'm Jason, and I'll see you in the next story.